let's talk about something you probably never think about, your trash. Because it turns out a simple garbage bag almost started a full-blown trade war between the US and Canada. It's a crazy story about a crisis that almost spiraled out of control and the super high-tech solution that, well, diffused the whole thing.
So to get a sense of the scale here, let's start with a number. And it's a big one. 3.46 million tons. That is how much trash every single year Ontario sends across the border into Michigan landfills. We're talking about a convoy of trucks that literally never stops, day or night.
Right, so you've got this massive river of garbage flowing south. The big question is, how on earth did that become the trigger for a major international crisis? How did trash put two of the world's closest allies on a collision course? That's what we're going to break down. Okay, so to really get this, you have to understand the backstory. For decades, there's been this, well, let's call it a unique relationship known as the Ontario-Michigan Waste Corridor. It's been this symbiotic thing, maybe a little dysfunctional, but it worked. And it was all built on one simple economic truth. And here's that truth. It all comes down to money. It's just simple economics. If you're in Ontario, because of high land costs and tough regulations, dumping a ton of trash could cost you up to, say, $150. But just across the border in Michigan, the state fee was, get this, 36 cents. Just 36 cents. This huge price gap created what they called the Michigan lure. It was just way, way cheaper to truck your garbage hundreds of miles away than to deal with it at home. And you gotta understand, this wasn't some minor thing, not a small side hustle. That Canadian garbage made up almost 15% of all the trash being buried in Michigan's landfills. The whole industry in Michigan kind of built its business model around this constant flow. Meanwhile, Ontario got to outsource a huge environmental problem. Everyone was, for a while, pretty happy. But, this kind of dependency, it creates a huge vulnerability. And experts had a pretty scary name for it, the waste cliff. The idea was, if that border suddenly slammed shut, Ontario's own landfills would be completely full, like at absolute zero capacity by the year 2034. And that's not just some line item on a budget, that's a real physical crisis. We're talking trash literally piling up in the streets. And then, boom, that ticking trash bomb finally went off. A perfect storm of political pressures coming from both sides of the border turned this decades-long arrangement into a full-blown economic war. And it escalated fast. It was like a classic pincer movement. First, the Trump administration hits them with a 25% tariff on garbage. Then, U.S. customs officials started using this sneaky loophole in the new trade deal, something called the transshipment trap. They started arguing that if even one tiny thing in a garbage truck, like, say, a broken toy made in China, wasn't from Canada, the entire load got hit with massive penalties. So, how does Ontario respond? Well, an absolutely furious Premier Doug Ford threatened to fight back by using Ontario's energy weapon, cutting off electricity exports to about 1.5 million American homes. Yeah, it was getting serious. A source who was close to this whole mess put it perfectly. They said, it is a mutually assured destruction scenario just played out with garbage instead of nukes. And that's not really an exaggeration. The U.S. sends its hazardous waste north to Canada for processing, while Canada sends its household trash south. The whole system is interconnected. One bad move and the entire thing could just totally collapse. So, in the middle of all this high-level political chaos, this geopolitical mess, a really fascinating solution started to emerge at the micro level. There was this company, 95 Wood, and they basically looked at the situation and said, okay, the old way of doing things is dead. So they decided to completely pivot. They went from being just another company that holds trash to one that refines it using technology. And their big idea, the core of their innovation, was this concept they called the digital refinery. The whole mindset shifted. They stopped looking at a pile of scrap wood and seeing garbage that needed to be buried. Instead, they started seeing it as a raw material, like an ore, something to be processed, verified, and turned into something new and valuable. And look, this wasn't just some cool tech for the sake of it. This was built for pure survival in a hostile new world. It basically acts as a digital shield. The logic is, if you can prove with absolute cryptographic certainty that what you have isn't waste, but is actually a valuable, verified commodity, then you can protect yourself from all those tariffs and the political games being played at the border. Okay, so that's the big idea, but how do they actually pull it off? How does it work? Well, they built this incredibly sophisticated system that essentially turns really complex environmental law into automated, verifiable code. Let's just walk through how a piece of wood goes through their system. First, right there on the construction site, an AI, Gemini, visually scans the wood to classify what type it is. That's step one, the initial sort. Then, at a central hub, they hit it with advanced sensors to check for things you can't see, like chemical contaminants, arsenic, chromium, that kind of stuff. Gotta make sure it's safe. Then, and this is the really cool part, the system's AI brain cross-references all that sensor data against the actual legal text of a specific law, Ontario Regulation 347. And if it passes all those checks, the final step is automatic. A completely audit-proof, legally binding certificate just gets generated. And this gets to maybe the most important concept here: explainable compliance. Think about it. A government auditor isn't just going to take your word for it or accept the computer said it's okay. So this system doesn't just give you a green check mark or a red X. It actually cites the exact chapter and verse of the law to justify its decision. It's like a lawyer taking an open book exam and showing all their work. And this is the tech that makes it all happen. They're using a whole suite of Google AI tools. Google Gemini basically acts as the system's eyes, doing that initial classification. Vertex AI Pipelines manages the whole automated workflow from start to finish. And this other technology, called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, that's the real brains of the legal part. It acts like an AI paralegal, pulling information directly from those legal documents to make sure every single decision is grounded in fact, not just some AI's best guess. All right, so the tech is obviously super impressive, but honestly, the financial model that this technology unlocks, it's pure genius. Because this system doesn't just solve a legal headache, it completely flips the entire economics of waste on its head. It really is a 1-2 punch. So punch number one, they use a method called decoupled billing. Because their system creates ironclad legal proof that the wood was diverted from a landfill, they can legally eliminate this big provincial waste tax, the CIRCIL levy, which is about $60 a ton. So for their customers, that line item on the bill just poof, it goes to zero. Okay, but here comes the second punch, the knockout. They don't just save their clients money, they actually create new money out of thin air. They take that verified clean wood and turn it into stable products like biochar. And by doing that, they can generate these super valuable things called carbon dioxide removal certificates, or CORCs. And on the open market, those are worth around $350 a ton. There's a quote from someone involved that just nails it. They called it economic alchemy and said, it's like owning a gold mine where the earth actually pays you to take the gold nuggets out of the ground. I mean, think about that. Most companies pay for their raw materials. 95 Wood literally gets paid to take their raw materials. They save their clients a ton on taxes, and then they create this incredibly valuable digital asset on the back end. It's a complete reversal of the old model. And after all that AI, all those sensors, all that legal code, what's the final product? It's this, a simple, high-contrast black and white PDF. But this little document is everything. It's what they call a digital product passport. It's the tangible, unfakeable, cryptographically secure proof that makes the whole economic engine turn. This is the piece of paper that proves trash is now a tariff-proof asset. So when you step back and look at the whole thing, the really crucial takeaway is this. The crisis started as a very physical problem, right? Too much actual garbage, not enough physical space. But the solution was entirely digital. It was data. It just makes you wonder, if this kind of data-driven alchemy can transform something as messy and low-tech as construction waste, what other industries, what other global supply chains are just sitting there waiting for their own digital refinery?